In 1936, the Sotheby's auction house in London put an unusual collection up for sale. They were the personal papers of Isaac Newton, documents that had remained hidden from public debate for more than 200 years. The world expected to find early calculations of gravity, notes on planetary motion, maybe rough drafts of differential calculus, something that would reinforce the familiar image of Newton as the supreme architect of classical physics. But what emerged from those archives caused immediate discomfort. More than 1 million words, nearly 30 years of work, were devoted almost entirely to alchemy and to studies that modern science had long dismissed as superstition or outright charlatanism. The reaction from the scientific community and from historians was swift and not entirely convincing. These writings were framed as an intellectual detour that Newton eventually outgrew, a waste of time, or perhaps even evidence of psychological instability. Accepting that explanation, however, requires selective attention. The documents did not disappear. They were purchased, studied, and preserved by some of the most influential thinkers of the modern era. John Maynard Keynes, one of the most important economists of the 20th century, acquired roughly half of Newton's alchemical manuscripts. He was neither a naive collector nor an enthusiast of the occult. After years of studying the material, he made a statement that unsettled many of his peers. Newton, he said, was not the first man of the Age of Reason, but the last of the magicians. Keynes later donated his collection to King's College, Cambridge, where it remains today. The other major portion of the archive followed a different path. Abraham Yehuda, a scholar of biblical texts and ancient chronology, acquired Newton's theological manuscripts. These included extensive treatises on biblical prophecy, historical calculations, and sacred time. This collection was eventually donated to the National Library of Israel. The material was sorted, categorized, and archived. Alchemy in one place, theology in another, science in a third. The division seemed to solve the problem. But that's not the most important point. The real issue is not that Newton was interested in alchemy, it's the intensity, the duration, and the method of that interest. Decades of sustained work, systematic repetition, careful corrections, an obsession incompatible with the idea of a casual hobby. And this leads us to another moment in history. In 1588, a massive fleet of warships, the so-called Spanish Armada, set sail from Spain toward England. The objective was clear and well documented: invade, defeat, and subjugate the English kingdom. The Spanish fleet was enormous. Hundreds of ships, thousands of men, supplies, artillery, and direct political backing from the Spanish crown. At the time, England appeared unprepared for a direct naval confrontation on the open sea. And yet, before the first major engagement, a surprising order was issued. No English ship was to leave port to confront the Spanish fleet at sea. That order did not come from Queen Elizabeth I, nor from any admiral. It came from John Dee, the Crown's scientific advisor, a man regarded even by his contemporaries as deeply enigmatic. In the 16th century, Dee was likely the most educated individual in England. Mathematician, astronomer, cartographer, linguist, and close advisor to the Queen, he had predicted that a powerful storm would strike the Spanish fleet. Historical records confirm that a series of storms did, in fact, scatter and destroy much of the Armada. England survived the attack without losing a single ship in direct combat. The standard explanation credits weather and Spanish strategic errors. Those factors were real. But the fact that Dee made a precise prediction and issued an order that defied conventional wisdom, yet proved completely correct, suggests that coincidence alone may not be a sufficient explanation. John Dee was not a mystical recluse operating on the fringes of power. He played a key role in transforming England from a peripheral island into a maritime power. He trained navigators, produced astronomical tables, and applied advanced mathematics to navigation and cartography. For Dee, geography, power, and knowledge followed the same rule. Whoever controls the code controls the system. And that same logic appears in different forms in the life of Isaac Newton. Newton was not a dreamer detached from material reality. On December 25, 1699, he was appointed Master of the Royal Mint of England, a position he held until his death in March of 1727. The role demanded extreme technical precision, identifying counterfeit coins, controlling metal alloys, measuring weight, density, and purity, separating silver from gold, and detecting nearly invisible frauds. Newton didn't merely perform the job, he transformed it. Administrative records show that under his leadership, more counterfeiters were sentenced to execution than under any previous master of the mint. This was not due to abstract moral severity, but because Newton knew exactly how metal should behave. He understood the intimate processes of metallic matter. That kind of knowledge isn't acquired through theory alone. It requires constant experimentation and hands-on practice. At the same time, away from public view, Newton devoted an extraordinary amount of time to studying the Bible. Manuscripts, now preserved in Israel, reveal decades of systematic analysis of prophetic texts. Revelation, the Book of Daniel, measurements of the temple, and ancient chronologies. He treated these texts as logical systems, not vague spiritual metaphors. Newton believed sacred history followed a rational structure, something that could be decoded, compared, and tested. In his writings, he attempted to align known historical events with prophetic sequences. In one such calculation, he suggested that the end of the world would not occur before the year 2060. He did not present this as revelation, but as a chronological boundary derived from textual analysis. Crucially, Newton did not separate these studies from his alchemical experiments. His notebooks record detailed procedures, mixtures, heating, cooling, distillation, and notes on color, texture, and residue. Many methods were copied from earlier authors, but always tested, compared, and refined. Terms like philosophical mercury, water of Saturn, and menstruum appear repeatedly. To modern readers, they sound vague. In their original technical context, they referred to specific processes. One recurring example is the so-called green lion experiment. Newton spent years attempting to distill what alchemists called the green lion, often associated with vitriol or lead-based compounds. The goal was to extract an acid spirit capable of dissolving gold. In his notes, he describes color changes with near-microscopic precision, from gray to black, the head of the crow, then to white, and finally to red or green. Each color marked a distinct stage of the process. This raises another question. If men like Newton and Dee were so practical, why conceal their methods behind symbols, dragons, lions, chemical marriages? A more common explanation points to fear of the Inquisition. This fear existed, but it doesn't explain everything. There was also a technical problem: the lack of vocabulary. In the 16th and 17th centuries, there were no words for atomic nuclei, electrons, nervous systems, or the subconscious. There was no language to describe processes that would only be formalized centuries later. Symbols were the only way to compress multiple layers of information into a single image. The green lion devouring the sun was not fantasy. Chemically, it described an acid-dissolving gold. Psychologically, it described internal transformation. The same symbol operated on different levels, depending on the observer's capacity. This was not decorative belief. It was compressed instruction. The symbol also served as protection. Those seeking power without understanding failed, not due to external punishment, but because they could not decode it. It was an effective form of intellectual access control. John Dee pushed this logic to its extreme. In 1564, he published Monas Hieroglyphica, a book entirely devoted to a single symbol. Dee believed that symbol condensed the grammar of the universe. Just as grammar structures language, the symbol structured reality. For Dee, symbols were not metaphors. They were cognitive tools, operating on the mind to align it with the structure of the cosmos. Before modern science separated disciplines, Dee treated numbers, forms, matter, and spirit as expressions of a single system. In these systems, the moon represented silver, mutability, and receptivity. The circle with a dot, the sun, represented gold and spirit. The central point marked the individual axis. The cross symbolized the material world and the four elements: earth, water, air, and fire. The semicircles at the base, associated with Aries, indicated the initiating fire of transformation. Today in the British Museum, there is an object that once belonged to him, a black obsidian mirror brought from the Americas. Mesoamerican cultures use similar mirrors in shamanic practices. Dee treated it as an experimental instrument, not for spiritual entertainment, but to access informational patterns beyond ordinary perception. From these practices, Dee claimed to have accessed a language he called Enochian. According to his records, it was not invented, it was extracted. It emerged from sessions in which raw perception was subjected to extreme logic. It was not meant for everyday conversation. For Dee, alchemy was not invention. It was recovery. He believed there once existed a primordial language prior to the fragmentation of knowledge, a language in which form, sound, and meaning operated directly on reality. Tradition associated this knowledge with Enoch, the grandfather of Noah, a figure said to have received and concealed this wisdom so it could survive the flood. Enoch, according to these accounts, did not use ordinary writing, which did not yet exist, but symbols. Regardless of how literally one takes that story, the pattern repeats across cultures. Critical knowledge is encoded, compressed, and transmitted in layers. Newton never publicly declared agreement with Dee, but his manuscripts reveal a similar pursuit, a search for the structure behind phenomena. His physics describes how bodies move. His alchemical writings ask why matter organizes itself the way it does. Modern technology has expanded our ability to observe: microscopes, spectroscopy, and computational models. But it hasn't eliminated the mystery. It has only pushed the boundary further out. Today we speak of genetic codes, programming languages, and complex systems. The idea that reality operates like a code is no longer foreign to contemporary thought. Perhaps the discomfort isn't in what these manuscripts contain, but in how willing we are to accept that science, at certain points, may have drifted away from important parts of the truth. Did you know about this mystical side of Isaac Newton? What do you think about all of this? Thanks for your time and attention.